Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Pike Homestead. My name is Adam, and I'm here to talk today a little bit about our Building Eden project. So, we've been making our way out here to the field that we're going to use in the deep, deep snow to give you an idea on where we're, give you an actual look at the place and talk a little bit about why we chose it. So, where I'm standing now, this backdrop in here in this corner, ultimately the plan is this is where we'll have our trailer and set up the office and everything like that for running the gardens. And then around behind me here, as we turn, this is the rest of the open space. So we've got about a little under 3 acres in this field, in this pasture. And so the gardens will most likely be here. A lot of it depends on how the water runs. So you see behind me here, that line of bushes, that is all, that's all a fairly low-lying, and we're assuming it's a seasonally swampy area. There's lots of cattails and reeds, broken ground and tufted up grass, and so we know it's a water flow, and that goes along here and all the way around along the side there, and then the wooden fence is kind of on the high ground. But in the middle, it's a lot higher than that. Like there's a couple of feet kind of downslope to those areas, so they're not really going to be usable for growing food or anything. But that's, along the like right before the ground drops down to those areas, that's where we want to start planting the trees and kind of renaturing a bit of the area. And over in the corner there, that's kind of the spot that we've kind of earmarked for the pond. Whew, gonna need snowshoes. We've had good weather, warm weather for a lot of days, a lot of snow melt, and then it's gotten ice cold again. Minus 20 here this morning on this beautiful, beautiful morning with more snow expected today. But it also gives us a nice, kind of rim of ice that I can sometimes walk on, sometimes not. So, woo! As you can see, gonna need to get some snowshoes, I think. So anyway, the farm here, it was a cattle operation. All of our fields were pasture, so we're making the assumption that we're gonna have decent soil pretty much everywhere. We've got different types of prairie grass and everything growing all across the property. So the biggest problem we're gonna have is quack grass, is what we've been told as far as weed problems. So we've been looking at ways to deal with that. So yes, we're assuming we have a lot of good soil, a lot of good organic matter in the soil, just due to the processes of cows grazing. And this field that I'm in particular, we know from some of our neighbors that it was the kind of dump zone that the previous farmers in the area had been using for all the manure from the barns. And they're saying they think that the whole field was pretty much covered with 5 or 6 feet of manure at one point, which obviously would have since broken down. So, just gonna try to get out of the wind here, because at minus 20, the wind is killer. That's why we have all the tall fences across the property. So anyway, that makes me assume that it's going to be great for growing without too much amendments on our part. It would have been years ago. The last time there would have been any cattle here would probably have been about 3 years ago, before it was sold to the people we bought it from, which was a farming operation who bought it because it was part of the whole quarter of land, and they cut off our 25 acres here and subdivided it to sell it, because they don't need it. They just need the fields over this way for growing their crops. So I'm assuming we're going to have good soil here, and depending on what are you doing, Hank Dog? Must you chew my hands all the time? Hank? And so depending on which way the water is running on the ground we're going to use for our plots, will decide the orientation of our gardens. We're going to set up, 4 plots, and I think, what are we doing? 8 to 10 beds per plot, that sort of thing. We're going to do 30-inch beds with 18 inches in between, and do some real, market gardener type of stuff, and as far as our plant layout and everything for helping dealing with weeds. But it all depends on which way the water flows, and that will change the orientation of your garden beds, so that you can get the water flowing down the tracks in between the beds rather than through them and washing away the soil. And we're hoping we don't have to do a lot in the way of amendments, just because the history of the land here, we're hoping we have some really good rich soil down there, but time will tell, and we'll go from there. So anyway, I'll just give you kind of look around at the whole field here without the Hank dog ruining everything. What are you doing? Oh, puppies. So yeah, I'll just kind of give you an overview. I'm probably not going to walk around a lot just because it's knee-deep snow and not very easy, and it's hard to keep a steady camera while you're doing that, but let's just give you a look here. So as you can see, left over from the cattle years, we've got a bale feeder right there, a couple of those scattered around the property, and then yes, we've got some wind breaks here. Most of the wind comes from this direction, and then we do get a fair amount here because it's fairly open on the north side of the field here. So that's the north end of the property there, along the tree line. That's where the main highway going by us is, and then we go up here to the corner, and then one of the range roads runs along this way, and that's the other edge of our property. Now, all the wire fences in that area are fairly low, and so they're all in the water, and a bunch of the fence posts have lost their footing, so that's got to all be redone, which is another reason why we're planning on using this space for our gardens rather than renting out for cattle, because even the full-grown cattle can get through the fences on this area. Kind of gives you an idea of the layout. It's hard to tell the camber of the land with all the snow filling in all the gaps, but yes, all along the fence line there and all the way around, it's fairly low. And there's actually 2 fences on that side, kind of cutting off the swamp. So where the trees are, those trees are all dead. So I'm going to be taking those down. But there's a fence between here, us and them, and then another fence between them and the road. And yeah, all those fences are pretty much not much good. And then we swing around to the south side here, and this is where we'll have both power, and that right there is a waterer. So we've got a water line running out here, and one of my first tasks will be to get the pump the pump that feeds the barn and the other 2 waterers we have over that way. And so I've got to get that reconnected and working, so we have running water that we can tap into right here, as well as we've got power until we can get solar set up. And even still, like if we get solar set up on the barn, the power lines will still be the power lines. We've got plugs and everything right there that we can tap into for anything we're going to build right in this area for the for having both the trailer and the decking and the extra offices and shed space that we're going to build here. So it seems like it's the ideal location for it. It's up fairly high. Don't know if you can tell, but just behind the fence there, actually the ground goes down into a bit of a gully, which we think is another kind of natural water run. You can kind of see the hill there, so the divot kind of runs all the way up here. And so we'll see how the water runs there. And then I'm assuming it also runs off that way and possibly down that way. So I'm thinking the most likely orientation for the gardens will probably be north-south, with the pass in between for the, to kind of direct the water. So anyway, this is the space that we're going to be building Eden on. So why don't you comment down below and tell us what you do with the space, and tell us what you think. We'd like to hear it. I'd like to hear your thoughts. So let us know. And also be sure to check out the video we did where we put up kind of the map and layout plan for what we're intending for the space. We'll link that here. And yeah, so thanks for spending your time with me today. I'm really excited to get started on this, even though it's going to be a couple months before we can actually get out here and make any actual work. And so yeah, follow along with us here on our Building Eden project. Thanks, bye. Going. Oh, that's a boy.